Okay, it's 7 o'clock, so I'll call this meeting of the Urbana City Council Committee of the Whole to order. It's yeah, it is. Is it? Can you hear me? On March 10th, 2014. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Ammons?
Here.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Jacobson?
Here.
Mr. Madigan?
Here.
Ms. Marlin?
Here.
Mr. Roberts?
Here.
Mr. Smythe?
Here.
Mayor Pressing.
Here.
And are there any additions to the agenda? If not, we have a staff report from Brad for sewers, I think.
Good evening. I'd like to introduce Brad Bennett, our Assistant City Engineer, and John Lyons, Civil Engineer. They'd like to make a presentation on the 2013 sewer, storm and sanitary sewer activity. And I will turn it over to John.
Okay, this is a brief summary. The full report can be found on the link shown here once I get the presentation up. Let's see. There we go. So on the city's website, the full report can be found. As I said, this will just be a brief summary of some of the more major topics within the report. So the first thing we wanted to talk about was our ongoing maintenance activities. One of those primary activities is our systematic sanitary sewer cleaning. This is done by our operations staff. So that's the areas that we focused on the last 3 years. The area in green is what we were able to accomplish this past year. Starting next year, they will be focusing on that the gap in between the 2013, and they'll be working their way south from there. Typically, we're getting about 3 sections done a year, so I would expect a similar amount to be done next year. Our systematic storm sewer cleaning, that used to be also done by our operations staff, starting in 2013, because of the stormwater utility fee, we are now using a private contractor to be doing that work. We'll be able to accomplish more by using them. Our operations staff trying to keep up with the sanitary sewer cleaning, we weren't making enough headway on the storm sewer cleaning side of things, so that'll be a good use of some of the funds that we'll be gaining from the stormwater utility fee. The areas shown in red are the areas that we were able to accomplish in this year's project, and that, as seen here, accomplished about 6.5 miles worth of sewer. Part of the cleaning process, sorry. Okay. Sorry, I've gotten off somewhere. Okay. Our storm sewer cleaning has been going up in recent years. That is something we've been striving to do. It does keep our other maintenance projects low. Also keeps our backups low. Again, that's part of the reason why we're hoping to be able to start doing more storm sewer cleaning with the stormwater utility fee. So this is just kind of obviously how we've been progressing through the last few years. The next thing that we try to do is a certain amount of sewer televising and inspections every year. I wanted to give you an idea of some of the problems we're looking for when we're doing our televising inspections. They're labeled, so hopefully this is apparent to everyone in the back of the room too. Roots coming through the joints tends to be a pretty big problem. That's what causes a lot of our backups. Infiltration through the lines during storm events can cause surcharging, which can also cause a lot of our sanitary backups. As you can see in the lower left, we have some sewers that have deteriorated to the point of having large holes through the walls. And offset joints in the final photo also restricts flow pretty significantly when you have situations such as this. So keep some of those pictures in mind. They will come up again. And so basically the point of our televising is once we identify how many problems we have in a particular line, that'll help us identify what the best course of maintenance will be for that line in the future. And that's something that we track on a regular basis. This is just kind of a shot of how much sewer televising we've been able to do both this past year and just historically speaking. So this year we were able to accomplish 6.5 miles of storm sewer. Again, that number will go up as we are able to use stormwater utility fee money to hire a contractor for some of that work. And our crews will continue to work on the sanitary side, and they were able to accomplish 3.2 miles this year. So once we have our televising inspection and we've identified what problems are in a line, we're able to move on to rehabilitation activities. And we have a list that we track particular lines that we have known problems in, and we work on eliminating lines off that list every year. As stated previously, this is an offset joint. This is a pretty typical situation that we have where a sewer point repair is the best option. And to give you an idea of what a point repair is, the majority of the line in a point repair is usually in pretty good shape. So in a situation like this, it's not worth rehabbing the entire line. The most cost-effective method is just to repair the one area, in this particular example, the offset joint. So that's where you'll see the singular hole dug up in the street, pipe replaced, and new pavement put back in its place. So just to kind of give you an idea of what we're looking at whenever we talk about point repairs. These are the locations where we were able to perform point repairs this past year. Hopefully they show up well enough for everyone. So on the left we have our storm sewer totals. We were able to fix 41 lineal feet of pipe. Those general locations are shown in blue. We were able to repair 4 manholes, and those locations are shown in red. Yes, all 4 of them showed up. Okay, good. And our budget for that this year was approximately $80,000. Likewise, we were able to fix 171 lineal feet of sanitary sewer. And those locations are shown in yellow. And we were also able to repair, or actually we installed 5 new manholes, and those locations are shown in purple. Our budget for on the sanitary was $150,000. Again, just so you can see what our trends have been in recent years, our repairs have somewhat trended down. Some of this I think is due to the fact that we've been able to start doing more sewer lining. We have found more lines that need more than just point repairs, and lining tends to be a better option for that, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I think that explains some of our trend down in these situations. Again, just a brief historical overview of point repairs that you can see across the whole city where we've been working since we started tracking this data in 1988. Again, blue is pipe repairs and red are manhole repairs. And as you can see, it's been spread pretty evenly throughout the city. Another map showing sanitary sewer repairs, same format. Pipe repairs in yellow, manhole repairs in purple. Some of our key areas that we have had complaints in the past have been filled in pretty well through the repair process. Especially one area in particular that I can think of is south of Washington, in this area down here. Moving on, when we get into sewer lining, that first picture is just, you may have seen some of those setups throughout the city here recently. That's generally what you will see whenever we're installing a sewer liner. The white bag tube going down in the manhole is the actual liner that they are cooking with steam that fits inside of the deteriorated sewer, and then they cut that off once it's been hardened. Again, the before and after photos show what the lining is capable of doing. You can see that line that was almost completely deteriorated to the point of collapse is now essentially a new smooth pipe again. And so whenever we run into those situations, point repairs are not cost effective. Lining is a much better alternative. Again, just a brief overview of what our lining projects have looked like the last few years. As you can see, they have been increasing, and we expect them to continue to do so. And as we work through our televising projects that we have coming up, hopefully we'll have even more information to go by for our future lining projects. This was this year's project, both for storm and sanitary sewer. We had a budget of $420,000, and with that we were able to line a half a mile of storm sewer and 2 miles of sanitary sewer. And again, this is fairly spread throughout the city. A lot of it coincided with MFT projects and also some drainage complaints. Historically, for storm sewer lining, these are the areas we've been able to touch so far. Again, with the stormwater utility fee, we hope to increase our storm sewer lining. Right now, we've only been able to line 3.2 miles of our system, which is about 2.7%. Sanitary, we've been able to make a little bit more progress. We're currently at 18.9 total miles lined and 18.5% of our entire system. We've also, I know this has been a topic, our pavement reimbursement program for our sewer lateral repairs. This year we had 11 properties participate, and the city has reimbursed those properties $31,706.42. One item that did not make it onto this slide was our overhead sewer program that we use to try and limit backups into people's basements. This year we had, and this information is in the full report if anyone wants to go back and look at it. This year we had three residences apply, and for a total reimbursement of $12,058.50. And that's it, unless anyone has any questions.
Thank you.
Just make a comment
Yeah.
to kind of recap. 20 years ago, if you were a council member, and if it rained 1 inch or more, you would be fretting the phone calls. We had many, many sewer backups throughout the city. And it's through the aggressiveness of the program that John just relayed to you, snapshot 2013, but since the late 80s, early 90s, we formed, at the time, it was a SWAT team, a stormwater, stormwater abatement team. And these two gentlemen and others, particularly in the operations division, can be and should be commended, because we don't have anywhere near the number of backups we used to, and we have tools and programs to make this possible. So both programs are vitally important to keep literally the water flowing, the storm or sanitary. And as John mentioned, with the stormwater utility fee, we have more tools available to us to be even more aggressive in dealing particularly with the stormwater efforts. And anyway, I thought it was important that you at least see there's been some new programs you've approved with funding. Wanted you to see so far what that took place in 2013.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for John? Yeah, Dennis.
So you were mentioning the typical point repair experiences that you've had. And I guess I've seen sections of those actually at the work sites. People are like holding on to pieces like that. What does it cost to do that kind of a project? I mean, typically, you said that you had done 4 or 5, and then the amount was like about $88,000 or something. So are these about $15,000 to $20,000 each time you do one of these?
Well, it kind of depends. I mean, it depends on how, we refer to them as a point repair, but sometimes a point repair is one joint that consists of, a foot or two of pipe, or sometimes it might be, 20 feet of pipe. So, I mean, the cost is pretty variable. I think internally we tend to think of it, what we usually say maybe around $4,000 for a point repair. And so then typically if you have more than one point repair on a sewer, it becomes more cost effective to line the sewer instead of do a point repair.
Yeah.
But that's pretty general, because like I said, if you go into an extended length of sewer, that $4,000 doesn't really hold true anymore.
Thanks.
Any other questions, Mayor?
Yeah, I wanted to ask about the life expectancy, the original sewers versus the new ones, and then what happens if it's lined? How does the life expectancy change?
I don't know if I know what the life expectancy of the existing sewers would have been.
I mean, for the clay pipe, it probably was 50 to 100 years. I would, for the materials, dating back from post-World War II, I would have said 50 years was their lifespan. The new sewer liners that we're installing nowadays, I mean, their life expectancy is 50 to 100 years. I would probably say 100 years is probably more realistic with is realistic with the cured in place liners.
So if you have an old one that was 50 years old and you line it, that gives it 100 more years?
Correct.
What about new sewers that are being put in new developments? What's their expected life?
It would be 100 years. Most of the new sewers that are going in on the sanitary side are plastic. They're the PVC pipe, which has an extremely long life.
Okay, thank you very much.
Just to add to the story a little bit, again, some sanitary sewer in town is concrete, and hydrogen sulfide gas just eats away at concrete. I wouldn't be surprised in one picture he showed.
That's actually exactly what that was.
Okay, so you don't use concrete for sanitary sewers. Secondly, there's corrugated metal pipe, unfortunately, that is used as sanitary sewers. And there's also, for lack of a better word, cardboard pipe that's in some parts of town that are used as sanitary sewers. The true vitrified clay pipe, the clay pipe, installed properly, just I'll leave it at that, can last up to 100 years. So if you look at that old clay or even today's products, they can be up to 100 years. That's not unusual, but unfortunately, through whatever means, there were some materials that should not have been used for sanitary sewer that were, which gets into why we need to line some sewers in some cases.
Okay. Eric, I think.
So this is a success story in the sense that the sewers are in much better shape than they were 20 years ago. And presumably you're still in a path where they're getting better and better. What will happen to our costs when we reach some optimal steady state? Is there a time when our annual costs, when we can get some, cost relief, and the effort doesn't have to be as intensive once we're really caught up?
Can we take that?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, potentially, there could be some reductions in costs. The other thing to remember too, though, is all materials age. So we're going in and fixing a lot of stuff that was installed, in maybe the 50s and 60s. But as every year goes on, eventually we're going to have to go back and start working on the stuff that was installed in the 70s and 80s. So I mean, it's kind of a cyclical thing. Nothing lasts for even the new sewer liners we're putting in. At some point in the distant future, someone's going to have to come back and rehab those pipes. So it's an ongoing effort. The big thing we're looking for is we want to reduce backups. Our goal is 0 backups. So we're not there yet. We work diligently to get there and appreciate your funding and support of us in our efforts to try to achieve that.
I would also say part of it is mitigation of root infiltration, and even in new sewers you will have some of that as time goes on. So while the sewer may be in good shape for 100 years, the structural capability of it if we want to limit backups, you may also be looking at lining to eliminate root infiltration. So even new subdivisions, as they plant trees, that could also become a problem 20, 30 years down the road. And so I guess the question would be is how much we expect Urbana to keep expanding, because as we expand, we'll get new sewers, and as we get new sewers, you'll have new areas that you'll have to potentially mitigate in the future. So that's another thing to keep in mind.
Carol?
I couldn't tell by the map if, I know when I came on the council, it was a huge Ellis subdivision. Did Ellis or any part of that get lined in this project?
Not this most recent one. See if we can skip back. The Ellis area is up here,
Okay.
and as you can see, hopefully, most of it actually has been lined. Most of the sanitary sewers in that area have been lined already. They were lined, I believe, most of them were lined in 2011, and some of them in 2002, I believe.
And so how do you get, like, if there's a street that hasn't been, how do they get on the plan, I guess, to be lined?
What was that?
I mentioned the part
Oh, yeah. We have a few priorities that we go off of. One is reported basement backups, flooding complaints. We do have a map, and that is included in the full report where we track anytime we have a flooding complaint. So that's a criteria that gets you on our lining list.
Okay.
During our routine televising and inspections, operations staff will bring to our attention any lines that they notice are having maintenance issues on a regular basis that they think lining or point repair will solve. Whenever we're doing MFT-related transportation projects where we're going to be reconstructing streets or building new surfaces on streets.
What's the MFT?
Motor fuel tax.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
You're talking about the motor fuel tax. Okay.
That'll help you get on the list also. Obviously, if we find a line that's in poor shape underneath an area where we're planning on building a new street, we don't want to have a collapse in the line and tear up a new street. So that'll also get you added to the list. Once you're on the list, then we generally look at, and this is somewhat subjective, but we grade the pipes on, how many defects are there, how serious are they, essentially giving them a grade, and then the worst lines are the ones that get moved to the top of the list. So currently, Ellis subdivision, the lines that had the most public sewer-related complaints have been lined at this point. The remaining ones had some backups, but they were due to private laterals and not public sewers.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Bill?
Just to pass on a kudo to these guys and everybody that relates to the storm and sanitary sewer program. Two comments. One is when Rick Manor became executive director of the sanitary district, I know early on one of the things that he said to me is how impressed he was with our comprehensive storm and sanitary sewer program, because the two do impact each other. And secondly, I know that these folks are part of a sanitary sewer technical committee, and they get together 3-4 times a year with our counterparts, Savoy, Champaign, U of I, et cetera. And it's a great working group that talks about solving common problems. Every year there is a report that John alluded to that we have available, but we also send a copy to the Illinois EPA. And Illinois EPA has cited Champaign-Urbana as a model in how to maintain sewers, storm and sanitary sewers. So we had lots of problems a while ago, but we're not there yet. But I appreciate your comments that will we ever see costs go down? I'd like to see that day. But right now it's lots of fine work that they do and troubleshooting. And the good part that I'm proud about and happy about is that we have some decent answers or solutions to give to people that we didn't have 20 years ago. And I think that's helpful, because that's probably in public works, that's the worst complaint you can have is, come see my basement full of sewage, and it's the worst. So.
Okay, thank you. Eric, did you have something else?
Well, yeah, just to, I guess this follows from what I said before. I mean, we've gained ground here. We haven't been, and this is no, this is not a derogatory comment about anybody, but I don't think we've gained ground on roads and streets. So the question might be at some point, should we consider moving some resources from one to the other? I mean, of course, we want to do everything. And, I got interviewed recently by Smile Politely, and the interviewer said, look, you're a liberal. I'm going to ask you the hardest possible question. What services would you cut if you had to cut the budget? And I don't want to cut anything. That's my bone. In my bones, it says, no, I want to do everything. But then the question is, with finite dollars, how do we prioritize this? And I don't want to punish this effort for doing so well.
Right.
And it's just a question of what are the magnitudes of the problems? What are the areas in public works where we really have the greatest needs?
A couple thoughts and comments. Number one is both utilities here, storm and sanitary, rough numbers are about $150 million investments, each one. So it's $300 million total. The sewer benefit tax dedicated to sanitary sewers, stormwater utility fee dedicated to storm sewers, both generate a little less than 1% of that value each year. I think if you're in business, or if you think about what it takes to maintain your business and all the assets you have, 1% is way, way, way on the low end of the amount of money you should generate each year. We're not there with streets, and we should talk about it another time. That's another situation. But the stormwater utility fee is helping roads from the standpoint that a large, sometimes 10 to as high as 20% of a road project could be stormwater related or drainage related. Now those costs can be charged against the stormwater utility fee. So that helps roads, to get to your question. But otherwise, really these fees, these funds are dedicated to sanitary and dedicated to storm sewers. So it may be long after I'm gone, but I would not recommend taking dollars away from this. And I don't think legally you can because of the ordinance that's involved in establishing these fees, but I'll look to the attorney to tell me otherwise. So really these are funds that are dedicated for sanitary sewers and for storm sewers, but storm sewer funding does help road work.
Just keep up the good work.
Drainage and water is the biggest enemy of roads.
Okay, thank you. We can move on to approval of the minutes from February 10th. Are there any corrections? Yeah, Charlie? Oh.
I wasn't here on February 10th.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
You're such a vivid presence.
Diane?
It says you were gone.
And
Were you here?
on item 10, I believe the meeting was adjourned by Chair Ammons.
Yeah, I saw that. So with those two corrections, are there any others? If not, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? That passes. Okay, I have a few comment cards. If you arrived late and didn't get a chance to fill out a card to comment, just fill out one in the back of the room and bring it up. First I have Carletta Donaldson. You didn't say you wanted to speak at the beginning? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mark. Okay. Donaldson?
Yeah, that's...
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, your turn.
I have 3 questions. I'm Carletta Donaldson, 406 Brookins Drive in Urbana. My first question, if someone can just briefly explain TIF, the tax increment financing term.
Does anyone want to do that? Oh, Mayor?
Thanks.
There are special districts that are set up. It's a state law, and we have to get the agreement of all the other taxing bodies to do one. I think they usually last about 20 years, and they're there to improve an area to raise the assessed value. And the ones that we've had have worked pretty well. We just closed one out, and I think the taxing bodies were happy with the performance. The biggest one would be the school district, and also we have the park district and the county, MTD, every other property taxing district would have to forego their income from that district, the incremental income from the improvements, so that that money can be reinvested for more improvements.
Okay.
And then it has a fixed time limit, so by the end, anything that's left over would be distributed to the taxing bodies.
Okay, and is that explanation on the website for the city of Urbana?
Yeah,
It is, okay.
It is.
That's it,
Okay.
okay. Then my second question.
If I could
oh,
add to that, it's also the 2013-14 budget. You can find a summary and explanation of it
What
on
page
page
is that
127
Page 127,
of
great.
the main annual budget book.
Okay, thank you. And then inspectors. A couple of weeks ago, it was in the paper where Urbana was lending an inspector to the city of Rantoul for the property on Route 45. Can someone explain that? I mean, especially when there was a rental registration, I believe it was, fee increased for property managers to hire an additional inspector. So my first question in regards to this is, was one hired and now we're able to loan because we're caught up on our inspections?
Mayor Preston.
Yeah, I would just say that the loan was just for one building. It's not a long-term thing. The county doesn't have building inspectors, so they asked us to help. And we'd like to encourage them to adopt building codes and the kinds of things that we like for property that will eventually be annexed to the city.
Okay, and then that
so
one-
it's not giving them an employee. It's
No, I
just
said
a little-
loan.
it was
I said
just-
loan.
It was just a little job, is what I'm saying, just to
Okay.
look at one building.
Okay.
Eric.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other part of that is that we had reason to believe that by doing that, we would recover some money that this particular landlord owed us.
Okay. Okay.
And Diane.
I did ask about this. The third inspector has not yet been hired,
Okay.
and the job in the county has already been done, and it took a couple of hours.
Gotcha. Thank you. And then my final question is about a proposed, I'm assuming proposed, bed and breakfast in Southeast Urbana off of Shirts. And I might not say this right, Provine Circle or Provine Circle?
I can answer that.
Dennis.
Yeah, that's going to come for the planning commission. I'm
Oh.
not sure what the date of their meeting is. I think it's upcoming. It's on their agenda, and Libby Tyler can explain that. Looks like she's approaching.
It's a zoning board case on the 19th.
Zoning board.
Okay. All righty. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next is Brandon Bowersox Johnson. You wanted to speak now. Okay. Hi, Brandon.
Yeah, good evening. Thanks for all the hard work you do. I'll try to be brief because I know you have a long agenda tonight. I just wanted to briefly speak. Oh, my name is Brandon Bowersox Johnson. My address is 506 West Florida. I wanted to just speak on a couple topics very briefly. The first is item 10 on your agenda, the resolution with the UC2B not-for-profit for billing services. I wanted to express my support and huge thanks to Urbana for taking over the billing on behalf of UC2B. As you probably know, I'm one of your 3 appointees to the UC2B board, and it was hugely helpful that Urbana helped to send out bills, collect bills from customers. That saved us. You know, we didn't, as a not-for-profit, have the capacity to do it on our own, and the commercial rates that we got from other providers were high, and the quality of their work was low, and so the city could do a better job and on a cost recovery basis, break even doing it, and it was incredibly helpful. So thank you. I will say on that item that so far that's been drafted at the staff level, and our UC2B board hasn't yet looked at it, so I'll ask that our board look at it maybe at this Friday's meeting, because we have a board meeting this week, so that if there are any concerns or questions from our board before you all take a final vote on it, that we'll be able to get you any feedback, either from me or Carol, one of your other representatives, or Rich Henschel, who's helped to put this together. So thank you, and I support that. The second item I wanted to briefly speak to is item number 15. At the very end of your agenda, a resolution about the FCC and about community broadband. And I'm not wearing my UC2B hat on this one simply because UC2B doesn't get engaged in federal lobbying or legislation or anything, but as a personal citizen, I support this resolution and support the idea that the FCC would help make sure all communities have the local right to make decisions about their broadband future and infrastructure. And as shocking as it may sound, there are some states that have state laws that often were written by the telecom industries and the incumbents that would block cities from getting involved in any broadband projects, even projects like Google Fiber, where the private sector is financing the whole project. They would block cities from getting involved in that, mostly as a way of quashing competition. So it's shocking that some states have those laws. I'm very glad that here in Illinois there are not those kind of laws, and that we were able to be part of this UC2B project that saves our school district a lot of money each year, let the city get to all its fire stations and places a lot cheaper than we would have if we would have just on our own tried to build our own city fiber network. So I encourage you to support that resolution, and we can help urge that the FCC look at that issue so that other states that don't have the same municipal rights that we did could someday entertain that option at least. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brandon. Any questions for Brandon?
Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Andrew Scheinman.
I'll try to be brief. Happy spring for the 24 hours it lasts. So I had talked to the council in the end of January about the U of I's cluster report. This was a report that I think, after the questions were asked last week, I believe was actually commissioned for the chancellor by her internal working group, economic advisory working group, and then was released. I actually saw an early version of it because I filed a Freedom of Information Act request for it. It was kind of amusing to me because the conclusions were all blacked out, which I guess is what you can do in a FOIL, but it was kind of amusing because I don't think it was particularly secret. It's a really interesting report. You have a link up to it on your website. Laura Frericks, the head of the research park, spoke on this last week, and it was a really interesting talk. The report recommends 3 areas for further commercialization and growth of the university: bioengineering, energy, and big data. One of the interesting things about the report, which every time I read has something new to say, is that there is apparently something in there which is beginning to cohere, which is a proposal to build a medical center here. And I can't speak for whether or not that will occur. I think that's a fascinating idea and probably a really good thing, not my expertise. But the report also calls for community. And listening to the conversation last week, I just wanted to put in a quick plug for that. I would love to see the city of Urbana set up a ombudsperson or some other person or persons who interact regularly with the university regarding this report. I think there's a huge opportunity here for the whole region. I think there's a huge opportunity here for the city of Urbana, especially if a medical center is built and if it is perchance built in Urbana. I would love to see a commitment to cooperation in writing on the part of everyone, not because I think people fail to communicate, but because this is so important for the whole region. This kind of economic growth doesn't occur with only the university taking the reins. It requires Urbana and Champaign and the surrounding area. I'd love to see a structure defined for who's doing what. The conversation last week was really interesting because it didn't seem very clear to me that the boundaries were well set. Even the Chancellor's Advisory Group, which is an internal group, I understand how not all decisions would be public until they're advanced further, but it's still strange. I mean, it would be nice to know who was on the group. There was described as being a number of people who were business leaders or other people in the community. I'm sure they were well qualified. It'd be nice to know. And structure also, it would be really nice to know what the role of the park is, what the university envisions it as being as things change and things continue to develop, what the university wants to lead on and what the university would like the surrounding cities in the area to help on. Because as I say, it's not sufficient to let the university lead. Everybody has to pull. I'd like to see transparency. Can be a touchy subject, and again, there are internal discussions that occur that should occur internally. but I'd like to see a bigger commitment from the university and from everyone else to be transparent about what's going on. And finally, again, I think that something that the city could do would be to set up a real mechanism for having a regular interaction. This is a city, after all, that has passion over a hackberry tree, which I have to say, having grown up here, I rolled my eyes when I listened to that conversation. I thought, yeah, this is the People's Republic. And then I learned something, and that was that there was so much enthusiasm and passion.
1 minute, sir.
Thank you. Enthusiasm and passion, and also profoundly intelligent discussion that this is a city that should be more than capable of taking that same energy, which was well spent on the hackberry, and targeting it for the cluster report. So thanks.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Scheinman? Thanks. And then I have a note from Reverend Dr. Evelyn Underwood and King James Underwood that they don't want to speak, but they're still concerned about the Dr. Ellis sewer problems. And we had a presentation. I hope you caught most of that. If not, you can get it online. There's a PowerPoint version online, I think. The one other input card I had wants to speak at the time of the item, I think. Okay. So that's it for public input. We have a presentation on Amazing Challenge from Tara McCauley from CU Public Health.
Sorry, it'll just be a second. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Tara, and I now work at CU Public Health. I knew Carol from another job. So I just wanted to talk with you all real quick about the Amazing Challenge, which is something that I don't know if you all have heard about it already, but the city employees are engaging in, and you all are welcome to as well. So the challenge comes out of grant funding that we have through the CDC and the Illinois Department of Public Health, and it's a worksite wellness transformation grant, the idea being to incorporate employee wellness in Champaign County work sites in a systematic way. The reason public health is involved at all is because of our concern, the CDC's concern for the obesity epidemic, which is actually a literal public health epidemic in the United States. It's causing death and disease in the millions and billions of dollars. So obesity, I'm sure you know, causes a lot of different health problems: heart disease, diabetes, cancer, you name it. It's bad. It's hard on your body. Worksite wellness, the reason that's a place where public health is intervening is because people spend a lot of time at work, and it's an ideal place to make an impact on their health. And from an employer perspective, healthy employees also spend less money on health insurance and sick days, and they're more productive. So there's a website portal that's been created by Public Health. It's free to use, and I gave you the address. And through that website portal, there's something called the Amazing Challenge that's going on right now, which is a worksite wellness challenge. It goes through June, and the idea is to encourage employees to be more physically active, to eat better, have better nutrition, have a better life balance. And there's daily challenges. So people will receive a weekly email when they participate. So for example, this week the challenge is to eat an apple every day. So they're just simple things for people to do, but to get people eating more whole foods, moving more. And our grant funding is allowing us to pay the registration costs for city employees for this, so it's no charge to the city. So if any of you want to register for the challenge, there's a website you would go to, and you click on the Join Today button. And you are encouraged to be on a team because it's more fun to have a team and encourage each other. The group ID for City of Urbana employee is actually on the flyer that I gave you. There's a little code on there, or you could ask Liz Borman. So if you all want to register, you fill out your contact info, register with your team. And then you'll get this dashboard, which is sort of like a MyFitnessPal kind of thing, where you can log what you've eaten, how much exercise you've had, whatever it is you want your goals to be in terms of wellness. And it's really simple to participate if you participate in the challenge. So like today I ate my apple, you just click this little box. And that's all you have to do. You can use it for other things, but you don't have to. It's pretty simple. And there's resources on there, so there are like healthy recipes, there are exercise videos, different things like that. If you're interested in looking up ideas, I think there's apple recipes or something this week. I haven't looked them up. So we kicked off the challenge February 26th, and the staff here organized a really nice kickoff. So these are a couple pictures from it was luau themed, and. So far, I'm told 38 people signed up for it that are city employees, and I always like to remind people it's never too late to be healthier in terms of moving more, eating better. It's, any time you start is better than not doing it. So again, you just use the group ID. You create your own login, and by the way, nobody sees your information besides yourself. It's private information. The only thing that people can see is your points, how many points you've checked off. The other thing really quick I wanted to tell you all about is this Illinois Healthy Worksite designation, which we're talking about whether the city wants to do, and it's through the governor's office, and it's you can be bronze, silver, or gold in terms of your worksite wellness strategies. So I just wanted to quickly throw up a little bit of information about that if the city's interested in pursuing that. It's a 3-year designation. The application's May 1st, and you'll get a certificate of achievement from the governor's office. And that's it. Do people have any questions?
Any questions for Tara? Yep.
I couldn't find the city's group ID. Oh, I got it
kind of
here.
small.
Okay, got it.
You're signing up now?
I'm signing up right now.
Awesome.
Any other questions, Diane?
Is that a challenge to the rest of us?
That is a challenge to the
Yeah.
rest of you. I want every
Do you
city
need a
council
certain
person-
percentage of employees?
No.
You're not aiming for anything?
Mm-mm. I mean,
I
it'd
know,
be great if
Carol,
everybody
you
did
think
it,
you're
but
above
no,
it
there's
all
no like
because you
requirement
ride
or
your
anything.
Bicycle 1,800 miles a week.
Yeah, they're pretty easy. They're, taking the stairs, things like that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, next on the agenda is ordinance number 2014-03-021, an ordinance approving an agreement for use of right-of-way with Campus Communications Group, Inc. Bill Gray, Public Works.
Thank you. This license agreement for use of public right-of-way is to extend fiber in the community to a variety of locations. Campus Communications has been in work with our conversations with our staff. Attached is a license agreement that much of it is boilerplate language that we've seen before in other similar license agreements. This one, and I apologize, the exhibits didn't turn out quite as clear as I'd like, but the verbal description of where the lines within public right-of-way are listed in the 12 pages of exhibits. And what's before you is an ordinance that would authorize the mayor and clerk to enter into this license agreement to extend fiber to various properties in the city of Urbana.
Are there any questions for Mr. Gray? Dennis?
Yeah. I went through it, and I just noticed, I think, an error, so I just thought I'd mention it.
Sure.
And maybe you know this already, but, and I was talking about one of the text boxes. Page 4 of 12 repeats the site location that's on page 3 of 12, and I think it was supposed to be different. So you might just double check on that. If it's part of the ordinance package, you might want to make that correction.
Any other questions?
Yeah, these are two different lengths.
Weren't they supposed? Wouldn't Exhibit A on page 4 of 12 want to say that it was the origin point was Green Street?
I think the
Main
text
Street
is
rather.
wrong. Yeah, I think the text is wrong.
The
That's what
text
you're
is
saying.
wrong. The
Yes.
diagram's correct, but I think the text just
Yes.
got duplicated. And
Okay, we'll clean that
that's
up
all.
for the next meeting.
Charlie?
Yeah, given that UC2B is going to be doing fiber, other independent projects, is there enough space in the right-of-way for everybody here?
Always a good question, and hence why we need detail in the right-of-way in the plans so that we're shown that there's space as such. But to answer your question at this point in time, unless there are multiple more entities in these exact same routes, there should be room in the right-of-way to do that. So, but we're careful about that. Lincoln Avenue in particular is a concern.
Yeah, okay. Now, is this the Pavlov stuff, or is this a different, yet another one?
This is Pavlov.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have anything, Eric?
Yeah, what is, how significant a duplication of costs is it to run fiber through these routes and then have to go back and do it again for residences?
Well, when we first were approached by this company, we asked that there be contact and communications with UC2B, and there was meetings held to discuss some sort of maybe purchase or acquisition of IRU, and at least start out with using some of the existing fiber and maybe working some sort of agreement out that way. No partnership or no agreement, if you will, was made. I think they made the business decision based on their economics to proceed with this project. I don't think we can outright force folks to cooperate with UC2B per se, but they did make the effort to contact them to see if there could be a partnership arranged. And that's about the extent of the limited knowledge that I know. But otherwise, we potentially run the risk of multiple fiber companies within the same right-of-way in various locations. Some right-of-way locations are much more filler than others with underground utilities. We're mindful of that, and I think for those who maybe join on Lincoln Avenue by Green Street late in the game, either they won't be able to fit in there, or they'll have to go extremely deep, or some other arrangement made. But right now, this particular plan, this particular location is acceptable to us.
Go ahead.
Can I do just one follow-up on that? But can we be assured that there's nothing, if we approve this, that there's nothing we're approving tonight that will increase costs or hinder the ability of UC2B to come in to their residences along these rights of way?
Right now, I can't answer that question. I don't know.
Wow.
I don't know.
That's a biggie to me.
Potentially, I think that's a question that would need to be directed to UC2B. So I'm not aware that it'd be an increased cost.
Diane?
As I understand it, this company serves multifamily apartment buildings, right? Not individual residences? Is that what this?
I'm not privy to all the customers, but yes, I think you could draw that conclusion based on these routes.
Any other questions? Eric?
Would there be really bad consequences if we delayed considering this until we were briefed on the possible impact on the expansion of UC2B?
I think I look at it as a first come, first served situation. And if this entity is coming here first to request use of our right-of-way, and again, legal may want to jump in, but I think that's that alone wouldn't stop me anyway from issuing a license agreement. If 5 similar companies down the road want to occupy the same rights of way, that could get crowded, that could get complicated, that may add cost. But you asked how it may impact UC2B. Maybe UC2B will work on an arrangement to use this conduit and this fiber. Or I don't know. Because it's already there, it may be in their interest to do that. I don't know. But does this approval tonight preempt UC2B or anyone else from going down these exact same streets? I would say it would not. You're asking, would it add cost to UC2B? I think intuitively, if you're taking the first crack in a right-of-way and you're getting the best choice, if you will, that I would think intuitively would be less cost than if you're the second or third or fourth person in that right-of-way and suddenly you have to, I've got a sanitary sewer, I have a gas main there, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that potentially could add cost, but the first person in the right-of-way, I doubt the cost will get any lower.
Carol?
I just wanted to ask if some of these streets seem to already have UC2B fiber on it, like Lincoln Avenue would be one. Do we know how much is already currently there?
We know the UC2B locations.
And
if
how they map to these?
If they chose not to, again, buy the fiber from UC2B but have their own facility, that's their choosing. And so potentially there may be a little more cost because, but again, we're talking about a conduit this size, okay, in a 60 or 80 or 100-foot right-of-way. So it's not like we're not putting in 5-foot diameter sewers or whatever. So there's a lot of room for conduit this size. Now, putting 2 in at the same time this size would be much more efficient. And one guy now, another person a year from now, another person 5 years from now. That's inefficient. But we don't know and we can't necessarily control that.
I had one question. Just it says the company is exempt from any licensing or right-of-way permit fees because they're a telecommunications services company and they pay taxes, or we collect taxes on telecommunication services, but we don't collect any taxes on internet service. And are they providing actually phone service that we do get taxes on? Do you know?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
And hence they're exempted from the annual maintenance fee per foot.
Any other questions? Thank you. Is there any discussion?
Yeah.
Charlie?
Move to send this to council.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to send this ordinance 2014-03-021 to council with recommendation for approval. Is that right? Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Next up is ordinance number 2014-03-022, an ordinance amending Schedule J of Section 23-183 of the Urbana Local Traffic Code prohibiting parking at all times on certain streets, Matthews Avenue between Church Street and Hill Street, and Matthews Avenue between Dublin Street and Beach Street. Are you going to talk about both of these at the same time? Okay. And also, we'll consider them separately, I guess, but also ordinance number 2014-03-023, an ordinance amending Schedule N of Section 23-193 of the Urbana Local Traffic Code limiting parking time on certain streets or public parking lots, Matthews Avenue between Church Street and Hill Street.
I should have done maybe a little show and tell tonight, before and after pictures of Matthews Street, but if you haven't driven up there, it's a marvelous transformation between Church and Ellis. So anyway, the new concrete street pavement is completed. We have nice defined parkways, sidewalks, ramps, and even street lighting. So the area has really changed. And what we have before you tonight is the Traffic Commission considered making consistent the parking restrictions and parking permissions on this street. So at the south end, we're doing a little bit of a flip-flop where we prohibit parking, we're going to allow parking, and where we prohibit it, don't prohibit it, we're going to prohibit it. So essentially, on Matthews, the west side will be fairly consistent with no parking anytime. The east side will allow parking. But at the far south end, because we know we've had troubles in the past with U of I student, faculty, staff parking, there's a 2-hour restriction. But for the most part, where we had parkway streets that were various widths with gravel dumped here and chip and seal there and parking here and parking there, it's now well defined, and we're trying to make a consistent parking plan and also respecting visibility concerns that may be at various streets. So what these ordinances do tonight is, for lack of a better word, kind of clean up and make consistent the parking on Matthews.
I'd like to recommend approval of these two ordinances to be sent to City Council, ordinance number 2014-03-022 and 2014-03-023 in omnibus fashion.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to consider these in omnibus fashion. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. That motion carries. So now we need a motion to approve them.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and approved to, or moved and seconded to send both of these ordinances to council with the recommendation for approval. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. That carries. Next up is ordinance number 2014-03-024, an ordinance amending Chapter 14 of the Code of Ordinances, City of Urbana, Illinois, regarding schedule of fees, July 1st, 2014 through June 30th, 2015. And Elizabeth Beatty from Finance will be here.
Hi.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
I would move to divide the question on this ordinance as an accommodation to me as a liquor license holder in the City of Urbana. And I would appreciate a second. I would move to divide the question by separating Section A from all the remaining ordinance provisions.
Yeah. It's been moved and seconded to divide the question, considering what you said.
Separating Section A from all the remaining provisions.
Section A from all the remaining positions. Any discussion of that? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so,
So if you want to talk about liquor now, I have to
I'll talk
leave.
about liquor now.
All right.
okay.
Okay. We are recommending an increase of 2% for the liquor tax. Does anybody have any questions?
Charlie?
Yeah, Elizabeth, if you could explain to me the difference between the T1 and the T3 license. And the T1 is an 8-hour one, and it's got a small fee, and the T3 is a...
The T1 is just an 8-hour special event license, temporary, 1 day. The T3 is a large event, something that would be held at the Canopy Club, and it used to be based on a percentage, like 5% of the cost that people were paying. Instead, they've changed it to a standard flat rate fee, and that fee goes into the Public Art Fund.
Okay, and so the 8-hour T1, how big?
Like if Bunnies were to have a party in their parking lot.
In their parking lot.
But if the Canopy Club, it can hold a really large event.
So it's based on the size of the venue.
Yeah,
then.
like the Pygmalion Festival that happened at the Civic Center. Outside, a huge, large event.
Okay, so that's okay. So
where they're charging.
Okay, where they're charging. Okay, so it's basically the size. So So if one of our small shops on Main Street were to have an event, they could get an 8-hour license and
Sure.
they could have something
Right, if they
special.
weren't charging people to come in for that.
Okay. Oh, they're not charging.
That's my understanding. I believe they're not charging. I believe there could be a cover charge, I guess, for a band or something, but I think that's separate.
Okay. I guess this is one that I'm a little bit concerned about, that we don't have it set right. And so I'd like to investigate this a little more and figure out if we're charging the wrong rates, or whether we need to have a better scale system to go with it. We may be keeping out stuff in the middle that would like to do people would like to do something in the middle here. The great big events can generate enough venue, but the smaller events might not be able to. So I'd like to work on this with staff. I know we've got a month on this to work through all this. So if that's okay, I'll find out more and make a proposal.
Dennis.
Yeah, we've had discussions about whether this is the temporary special event permit is in line with what's possible to do in Champaign, and we also want to promote organizations who want to hold events that maybe bring in, catered, beverage services or something. And I guess I would agree this would be a really important thing to sort out, so we get this one right, so we don't prohibit good events from happening downtown.
Anyone else have questions on that? Eric?
So do I understand the thrust of your proposal, Charlie, is that we would come back and look at this again in a month with a proposal for a finer gradation of the temporary event permit?
Possibly, yeah. The whole point that we have to do, the schedule of fees has to be put out there for 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to put it out there for 30 days starting, I don't know, it starts tonight or starts next week? Starts tomorrow, okay. Assuming we approve that process, we start the countdown tomorrow, but we've got 30 days to figure out any changes.
Okay.
Yeah, so we don't have to make changes tonight, but at the end of this 30-day period, we gotta come up with with what we're gonna do.
Okay. So you're actually speaking in support of approving this tonight?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I have no problem with getting it out there.
Any other discussion? If not, then does someone want to make a motion for Section A?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve the proposed changes to the liquor licenses in Urbana, amounting to about 2% increase for Section A on all the various classes, as indicated.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to send Part A of the ordinance amending the schedule of fees concerning liquor licenses only to council with a recommendation for approval. Is that right?
Yeah.
Is there any more discussion? Is that the motion, or did you want?
It would go to the May 5th council meeting.
May 5th.
May 5th.
Okay, so that I'll amend my comment to include the date of May 5th.
Sent to council on May 5th. Any further discussion? Carol?
I just wanted to ask, for some reason I thought we increased these fees less than a year ago. Is this just in line and timing to get to the year date?
Yeah,
that
some
we're
of
on?
these fees, like the liquor and sewer, they are increased annually.
So we did. So this would keep us in line with the annual?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Diane?
Do you have an idea of how much additional revenue this is expected to generate?
At this time, I don't, but I could email you that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries. Okay, Mr. Madigan can rejoin the meeting. And we'll consider the rest of the sections of the schedule of fees.
Okay.
Elizabeth?
I'll just go through the list. My memo kind of outlines everything. When we last increased fees and the ones that we are proposing, since it's kind of long. But the fire department is looking to increase non-hazardous and hazardous material facilities fees. Does anybody have any questions in regards to that one?
How long has it been since these have been raised?
The last time those fees were increased were in 2012, and the structure totally changed, how they did it.
Okay.
Yes.
Carol?
I guess I don't exactly have an idea of how you get to what the fee should be.
Right. I'm gonna maybe if Brian would like to come over here and.
And that would be for all of them. I just don't have a way to figure that part out.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, for our fire prevention permit fees, in 2012, Chief Dilly kind of restructured the way we charge these fees. Before that, we didn't really charge a fee for certificates of occupancy and the fire prevention permits for the fire department, and we changed those fees to upgrade our inspection services. A lot of our commercial inspections that couldn't be accomplished with our engine companies were being done on overtime with fire department personnel, and so these fees were established to compensate for that. And then our hazardous materials facilities, on farther back in the document, it breaks it down for each type of facility on what the potential hazard is, and we paid our hazardous materials officer to inspect those facilities, decide what the fees were, and then it helps our preparedness for those occupancies in the event we had a release. We maintain a hazmat trailer and gas monitoring equipment to respond to these calls. And the cost of sensors and bump gas to keep the meters accurate continues to rise, and we also have to replace the hazardous materials protective equipment, the absorbent material that goes out of date. So these are all fees that help us recoup that money to keep that service viable. And you go down, any questions on number 2? Okay, number 3 on the fire department fees, the reimbursement for fire rescue per firefighter service for non-residents. That comes into play if we have to dispatch our rescue team, or if we have a hazmat call that we're able to recoup fees from non-residents. And for example, we've ran a couple of hazmat calls on campus recently that our expense was about $1,200 per call to replace hazmat suits. And this fee here would actually work for the non-residents. We maintain a rescue team, confined space team, rope rescue, trench rescue, and in the event we have to deploy this group, this gives us a standard which is based on state law. And the state allows us to reimburse $70 per firefighter per hour, and the $250 for apparatus, which we currently have. So that's number 2.
Start playing music. We need some help.
Yeah. I guess, is there any other questions?
I've got a question on that one. So that fee was increased to $56 per hour last year. And this is a 25% increase. Was it just that we missed the mark last year on the per hour fee, or or are we just saying the state allows 70, so we're going to that?
Yeah, the state allows 70. Champaign Fire charges 70, and we want to be consistent across the city lines with the charges that we have to reimburse.
Well, I can understand the consistency with some fees, you know, business fees and that type of thing. This is more of a, well, okay. I'm just curious about the 25% increase in a year. I'm not saying it's not justified. I just think that there probably ought to be a little more explanation about that large of an increase in 12 months.
And this is a fee we very seldom charge, and I mean, it's just we have difficulty maintaining the training levels and the equipment levels that are required for such a specialized service that's, you know, it's a high-risk activity and it's a low-volume activity, so.
Oh, Eric?
Are the other fees that we're looking at, the increased fees, are they also now consistent with Champaign?
On the fire prevention permit fees, or?
Well, I'm looking at, for example, hazardous material facilities, you know, all down the line, there are fairly significant, or should I only be looking at number 2? Or are you also hazardous material facilities and
Yeah, they're all
they're all under the fire department.
Yeah, they all fall under the fire protection permit.
So are we in those instances? Are we kind of catching up with Champaign on the fees? Are we overtaking them? And I guess, you know, obviously we don't. In a certain sense, we don't have to do what Champaign is doing just
Correct.
because they're doing it. But on the other hand, we have to be mindful of putting ourselves at a competitive disadvantage relative to where the businesses who pay these fees or individuals. So I'm just curious as to how these new fees place us with respect to Champaign.
Champaign does not have a fire prevention permit fee at this time, and I guess we established these fees back in 2012 to be able to do the inspections and actually to keep up with the expense.
Okay.
I mean, they basically have a greater budget than our fire department does, so this is a vehicle by which we can fund this response service in our town.
I see. Okay.
Any other questions for Brian?
And I wanted to respond to your question, Carol, in regards to why we review these fees annually. And in my memo to you, the licenses, permits, we look at them, some of them annually, liquor fees, sewer benefit tax, others are increased annually according to the CPI. But a lot of these fees get looked at every 3 to 4 years for an increase, and that's really to maintain the services that the city provides to the citizens, and the majority of those costs are personnel. So personnel costs rise, we have to find ways to cover that. All right. Item 4 is our food handling license. Food permits are handled through yes.
Just what is this license? I'm in the food handling business, and I'm not quite sure what it is.
It's your annual license. You would be an establishment, so you would license annually through the Champaign-Urbana Public Health District. They handle the licensing process for both the city of Urbana and the city of Champaign. That way, it's more seamless. It's just a one-stop.
Right. Yeah, I understand. I deal with public health, but I mean, what is the city charging a fee for? Why is that?
You pay that when you pay public health. You've already been paying a fee for your establishment. You've been paying $80 annually.
And what do I get for that from the city of Urbana?
For this, you get a public health license, and not everybody probably operates their business as well as you. So some establishments, when Champaign-Urbana Public Health goes in and they decide that this establishment has a lot of violations, it gives the city the ability to pull their license so they can't operate.
Carol?
I did have one question that was actually sent to me by a restaurant owner.
Sure.
And I'm glad this is on here.
Okay.
The question was, if you could clarify, maybe you can.
I might not be able to right now, but I'll
if
try.
if you know, because of the food handling licensing fee, is this just for the business, or is it for each employee that handles food?
It's just an annual fee for the business.
Okay.
Employee, if they are charged fees to cook, that's something totally separate.
Not through the city of Urbana.
No, I can answer that for you. That's a public health fee. There's a state law that requires managers and cooks to have a sanitation license.
Okay.
Some employers pay for that for their employees, others don't.
Okay.
The state has passed a new law that is requiring every person in the business that has anything to do with preparation or food handling to, I don't actually. I don't have a license, so I don't have to recuse myself. I'm the owner of the business, I'm not the cook. But then every person who handles any food in the business will be required to have a $10 permit and take a 1.5 hour class online for that. But I hate to belabor this. I know we got a long list here, but this is important to me. What I'm hearing is, okay, I pay public health, and I'm not trying to beat you up on this because I know you're just presenting this here. So, but it seems to me that the city is doing nothing for this money other than giving me a piece of paper. If I'm in hock with the public health department, they can pull my license that they issue. I don't see the use in this permit, and frankly, I'll probably be offering an ordinance that'll get beat down, but I'm going to try to repeal it. I don't see any, it's a waste of your time. I mean, of course, it's in the city of Urbana, but we have another jurisdiction that deals just with this. I see, this is a redundancy that I see absolutely no benefit in.
Eric.
Well, maybe I need to be educated about this. The Urbana Public Health, Champaign-Urbana Public Health District passes the money, collects the money, passes it through to us. But then they conduct the inspections.
They conduct the inspections, but you are paying, the city of Urbana and the city of Champaign has a joint agreement with the Champaign Urbana Public Health District that allows them to license these businesses on behalf of the cities. So I don't feel confident giving you an exact answer on saying, but I'm fairly certain, I would hope that this agreement wouldn't have been made if it wasn't designed for the city to be able to, make sure that they had the authority to, if a business wasn't operating within, meeting a certain criteria, to be able to pull that license. But I would need to look at the ordinance or the agreement. I can't.
Can I follow up just for a second? So, how does the public health district, if they don't get the funds to do the inspections from this fee, where do they get the funds to do the inspections?
They do get part of the. So currently the fee's $80. They keep $10 of that. So, they are keeping, that's their administrative fee for processing and issuing the license.
Right, but my fee to them is several $100s a year, okay? So they're passing a portion through to the city, I think, and the city is setting its own fee. I guess what I'm asking is, what is the city doing to earn that? There ought to be some legitimate function that is not redundant with the Department of Public Health. So, I mean, we can talk about this another day, but.
Dennis?
Well, it might not be so much what the city's specifically doing, but it's what it's getting is inspections. Right. And I want to kind of go back in history a little bit, and about 7 years ago when the question about whether smoking should be allowed in public restaurants, and Urbana was making some of the first decisions to limit smoking in public areas. It was the health department, the Champaign-Urbana Public Health District, that we turned to do the enforcement, and they were willing to do the enforcement observation of various restaurants in the city on behalf of the city of Urbana, and used their health inspectors. And what they did is they just enlarged the scope of inspection and observation that they did for the community. Of course, this is kind of moot now because we have a state ordinance about smoking in public places, especially restaurants. But they were extremely helpful in doing that. So that allowed Urbana not to have to enroll or to hire unique inspectors at that time. So we were using their employees, and that was a great benefit to us.
I'm going to the next ones.
Okay, I have one more question about this.
Oh, okay, Dennis.
I'd like to ask, and so number D under food handling licenses, sidewalk cafe, initial adjacent premises. I'm wondering if we're going to be are we going to be using this particular item to cover the Urbanas that are going to be included in future outdoor events?
I briefly heard about Urbana last week. I believe so, yes. But maybe Tom can offer more.
Tom Carino.
We certainly have not finalized it at this point, but our plan is to come back to you to amend the schedule of fees if the Urbana program does go forward. So we'll be back on that.
And that would be to create a unique license for Urbana?
There would be one fee for sidewalk cafe permit. There would be an additional fee for a Urbana permit. Again, we'll be back to you with that.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
So we'll go to the next topic.
Sure. Well, this is vehicle for hire, and what we're doing here is we're just increasing duplicate license fees when drivers have lost their driving permit or misplaced their license. This is the cost for us to have to duplicate that. And then also late fees for not turning in the registration on time, or we would increase that. And then also if they want to transfer a registration to another vehicle, or get a different registration for the same vehicle.
Any questions on that part? Diane?
I don't have it on that section. Can I go back up to miscellaneous? And
Sure.
this actually relates to a phone call I got this morning from a manager of an apartment complex who was complaining that a particular party promotion company was basically littering his complex with flyers promoting a party at a location in Champaign, and he wasn't selling anything, he was just promoting parties. And this manager then would have to go around and remove all these flyers because he said it was 1,000 flyers left everywhere over the complex. So would that be a canvasser, and would that party promoter fall under this category of needing a license to litter places with flyers?
I would need to get back to you on that.
Okay.
I'm not 100%
I'll send you
sure.
the details.
Yeah.
All right.
Forward it to me.
Any other questions on that part?
Okay. Going out of business sale permit. I don't think we typically have a lot of these, but just in case somebody would want to go out of business and advertise it, it's just keeping up and updating the fees.
We got to go out of business.
So.
Yeah, that one hurts. You're
Yeah.
going out of business and you got to
We
pay a
don't-
fee to do
Are
that.
these for like perpetual going out of businesses? Like the ones that have the big going out of business signs
The
up
going out of business.
over and over and over
Yeah,
again?
yeah. Like say, I don't know, just when Rhodes Furniture was going out of business, or Sears going out of business, they could afford big signs, and they would have big sales, and they'd want to advertise that to try to get rid of
It
much
just
stuff.
seems like-
I'm not quite sure. Like, I don't think, the Corkscrew had a going out of business sale. I think they just closed up, transferred everything, to their.
It just seems a bit ironic to me that we have a fee for a business legitimately going out of
Everything. I can't tell you the last time we had this, so.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The business death tax.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You're hurting us, so we're going to hurt you. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. Yes.
I would imagine that there's some historical incident that happened that's, made the ordinance, but I've never seen a lot of businesses closing. Fortunately, we've had new ones move in pretty
Yeah.
quickly.
Yep.
So have you ever gotten these fees?
They are processed through the city clerk's office.
I've been here since 1993, and I've had only one business to say that they were going out of business.
So the bottom line is they just
Strike
go out
it.
of business and don't bother to file
Right.
the fee, and I think that's a good thing. It's not a good thing they went
Well,
out, but a good thing they don't ask and we don't pursue.
I think,
Charlie?
I think it'd be legitimate to ask our city attorney to look into this or have somebody look into this, whether it's redundant.
Right.
Okay.
Do you know if we have fees for special signs, like banner signs?
We have sign permits. Yes.
So that's a separate fee.
That's-
Seems like that would cover it.
Yeah, this may be a historical artifact, and let's just get it out of the books.
Anyone else? The next part?
It's for 60 days.
Yeah. Takes a while to have a sale.
Okay. The next one is just the registration fee for a domestic partnership. And again, it started out fairly reasonable, and we're just increasing that price. I'm not really, we still do a fair amount of these. I would say probably a handful a month. So people are still coming to register.
Dennis?
Yeah, do you want to give us a reference to that? It looks like we don't see that in our file.
Number 7
Oh.
in your memo, and
Page
it's
6.
on
Oh,
page 6.
I see. Okay, thanks.
Any questions?
H.
Number 8, return check charge. The bank charge is $30. We need to increase that just to keep up with what they're charging. So don't bounce a check.
Bill?
I think
Oh,
the
sorry.
numbering system is off from what we've got here.
Is it on your memo?
Yeah, return check charge is I under item 4.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking at the memo. Yes. Okay. We'll go from that.
Carol, did you have a question?
Yeah, I think the return check charge highlights the point that the going out of business things really brings to light here. The actual cost of the return check is $30, and the bank charges us that, so we have to naturally charge that as well. But as I go down and try to figure out how we come up with an increase by $2 or $5, I just can't get any rhyme or reason. So if we are increasing fees out of covering costs or the CPI, then I think it should be consistent. If it's 2%, 3%, I think it should be consistent unless we can actually demonstrate that the cost is more. And I don't think we've been able, not in what I've seen, been able to demonstrate where the variation in cost is. And so I when I first came on the council, we had to raise fees. This was before us, and some of these were. The sewer fee was there, and now we're going to raise it again, and it seems like I don't think I've been on the council for a year, not until April. So I'm just concerned about how we get to what the fee should be and not overtaxing people that can't keep up with the fees.
Well, again, it's my understanding that, the main reason why we increase these fees is because of the rising personnel cost that it costs the city to pay its employees. So later on in this document, there's an increase under police for police order tows and relocator tows, and every year the police are increasing. It's just to keep up with these salaries, among a few
I understand
other
you.
things.
It just doesn't
Mayor
seem
Preston?
because we paid the taxes for
Sorry.
it already,
Well, Urbana for many years has done annual adjustments, and some of these things don't go annually, but
No.
Champaign for many years didn't do it, and they would have to, make a big change after 10 years or more. So they've switched to our system. It's better to have a lot of small increases, so you just keep up with your rising costs, because you look at the cost of healthcare, for example, even when we didn't give raises one year, health care still went up, so our cost of running the city kept going up. So this is just an attempt to keep things in sync.
And it's my understanding we're trying to prevent putting that back on the majority of the taxpayers by doing, a tax increase for properties. Okay. The next one is a grant management fee and the recording fee. That's what they are charging now to record a document.
That's right here now, on page 6.
Number 9.
Any questions on that one?
For J.
That's what the recorder of deeds charges.
Yeah, the record at the Champaign County. Yep. And next one is Public Works permits and licenses. Public Works wanted to do some changes with the wording here. I guess delete things that they felt really perhaps repeated itself. And that's what, there's not really a fee increase there, but just some changes.
And the removal of
Number F, this is the non-franchise utility maintenance fee, and that is just an annual increase per the CPI. Same with the sewer use charge. The sewer use charge, just another annual increase with the CPI. Okay, and here we are with the sewer use charge, the tax that is billed through the sanitary district. It's recommended that it increase 2.5%, and that will not take effect till January 1st of 2015. Any questions?
Do we know what that'll generate?
I do not. You could probably contact Richard Henschel. I'll ask him to send you something in regards to that.
Does that take us to parking then?
I'm sorry?
Does that take us to parking? Looks like everything else in between is the same, right?
There's a small increase for a planning review.
Oh, okay.
It's going from 0.005 times the cost of the project to 0.006. And that had not been increased since 1998.
Diane?
I had a question on page 12, a tent permit. It's a $50 charge for the erection of a tent having a gross area of 400 square feet or more. Is that like if you have a tent in your yard for a wedding, you have to pay a permit? What is?
I would imagine, but it's another one of those fees that I have no idea. Tent permit?
Page 12.
Libby, can you tell us what a tent permit is?
Event tents, those large, I mean, we call them tent, but they're those large structures that are erected for events, weddings. Those need to be checked and inspected for stability.
The city comes out and inspects the tents?
Yeah, we'll look at how they're placing them on the ground and make sure they're secure. They don't fly away and cause damage.
Is this on private as well as public property?
Mm-hmm.
How many of these do we issue a year?
Not too many, but every year there are some.
And who
you know, like
who inspects?
fairgrounds or large tent structures are what we're talking about. Not something you'd put in your backyard.
So this is on public property?
For the most part.
Okay.
Could be on any property.
Who?
Yeah.
Who does the inspections?
Steve Cochran would.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay. Now we're at the special parking permits. This is basically a proposed increase to kind of play a little catch up here with the cost to administer the special parking permit program in the West Urbana zone. The annual fee has not been increased since 1986. And there are a lot of costs involved. enforcement, public works for signs, painting. There's also a lot of administrative costs for those who come and, get an application to have a permit. We do offer a lot of different types of permits for the residents in the area, and I believe for the most part, the majority of them are happy that the cost has remained so low. Doing a comparative study with across town, their permit fees are very expensive for on-street parking, nowhere near the start of ours. So it's kind of nice that we can offer this service and keep it at a fairly low rate.
Yeah, Charlie?
Yeah, you could probably convince me it needs to be a little more than you're increasing it, but I think the part that is a little hard to take is the one-day permit jump. $2 to $5 is really way too. I think that's way too big a jump, and I would recommend to go from $2 to $3 per night and $5 to $7.50 instead of $10. And I don't understand the last sentence, the increased refund for permits returned. I don't know how that's calculated.
Say you were to purchase a permit at the normal rate of, say it increases to $150, but then you found a parking spot the next day. Maybe your landlord said, oh, we just had one open up. So instead of only getting the designated refund of $101.20 or $112.50 after you just spent $150 the day before, we would, for 7 days, if you return it within 7 days after purchase, we would only deduct that by $5 a day.
Oh, okay.
Which is the cost of a one-day permit at this proposed rate.
Okay, so you would, if people agree that jumping from 2 to 5 is too much and we go from 2 to 3, you could adjust this number appropriately then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
I see people nodding that 2 to 3 is okay. I'd move to change this from 2 to 3. I'll make a formal motion.
And
It's been moved and seconded to amend this or change this to
From $2
to $3 or $5 to $3 instead.
$3 and then $5 to $7.50, and then from 2 to 3 in that last sentence.
Okay.
And then $3 instead of $5 in the last sentence.
Yep.
Okay.
Any more discussion on that item? Okay, want to take a vote on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? You want to keep going, or is that it?
There's a few more. The meter bagging, like to increase the campus rate from $15 a day to $17 a day, and from 20 to 22 if you don't give us a 24-hour notice. And then just for the first day, and then each day following would be at the $17. And then we also would like to propose a different meter bag rate. Currently, there isn't one for the downtown because the cost to park in the downtown is much less than on campus or around the hospital. So we'd like to decrease that to $10 a day for a meter bag, and or propose that new fee, $10 a day, and then $15 if you don't give us a 24-hour notice and for the first day, and then $10 for each day after that. Okay. And then the last increase proposed is the vehicle towing for police ordered tow and the relocator tow. This is the charge that if the police has to tow a vehicle, not for an accident, but say someone had a vehicle impoundment, or if a relocator tows a vehicle off the lot at the request, then the towing company would charge a $30 fee on top of the towing charge instead of a $25, and that is the part that the city would get back.
Yeah, Charlie?
Yeah, I wasn't going to bring up anything on that one. I have an additional point under miscellaneous that I wanted to talk about. Under miscellaneous 4, section 4, G, there's an ambulance fee. It's on page 6. Ambulance fee is $500. We've talked about this a number of years ago and never came back to looking at what that number really should be, given what ambulances charge the patients they pick up. So I'm not sure how we, again, this is a number we need to go look at. Is
I think that was increased last year, wasn't it?
It was not increased last year. I know they wanted to increase it, and I know that Brian was looking into possibly increasing that. It's my understanding we were just trying to remain consistent with the fee that we were charging with Champaign, and they were unwilling to budge from their $500 fee, and that's why we decided not to. But if it's
Charlie?
Well, I'd like to look at this one some more too,
okay.
and possibly amend it.
Okay.
I'll try to work on this as well with staff.
Okay, Dennis?
Yeah. Elizabeth, to go back to the parking downtown and the bagging of a parking meter.
Yes.
Who makes the application for that? Is that a business, or is that a construction-related bagging?
Most times it's construction.
So if you're having construction done in your shop or something, and there has to be somebody who parks in that
when
spot?
Pizza M was under construction and they were redoing the restaurants in there before it was completed, the contractors were reserving spots on the street with a meter bag. So.
And this has come up also in residential areas where people are having contractors come up, and their contractors are parking on the street and taking up parking spots that are available to usually for residents.
In the restricted area where there's
Yeah.
permit parking, we do offer a number of different types of construction and service vehicle permits in that area.
Oh.
Residents can apply for up to a 30-day free construction permit for any home improvements that they would be doing at the residence. They can get however many they need for the resident or their contractors. Contractors such as lawn care services, plumbers, those types of businesses that work in that area often, but at different locations. We do offer a $20 annual service vehicle permit to those contractors. So we do have.
There's a lot of ways you can have that.
There are tons of ways.
Available parking spot if you need it.
Yep.
Diane?
I understand it's been close to 15 to 20 years since parking meter rates have changed in downtown Urbana.
Yes.
And I'm also very concerned about the amount of money that's being lost annually in the parking garage.
Yes.
So are we going to, maybe it's not something to be done in this particular fee schedule, but is there a plan to evaluate the downtown parking fee schedule and how we can reduce the revenue loss or the losses that we're seeing in the parking garage?
It has been since 1991 since meter rates were increased in the downtown. They're at 25 cents an hour. And the parking garage, I believe the last time the rates were increased there were maybe in 1999. And staff is planning on studying the downtown business area and for a possible rate increase this coming summer. So we
that
are
will be-
going to be looking at
Okay.
that, and that will be something that will be coming to council.
So it'll be considered separately?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mike?
I have a question maybe for Tom or Libby. Do we know, like in Pizza M's situation, how many spaces they took for how many days?
That would be something I could get you the numbers on.
Okay.
Yeah, they.
Well, yeah, I'm just curious because doing this might not. We might be foregoing, some quarters of revenue every day, but at the same time, we're going to be increasing the cost for a fit out of a new business. Not saying that that's going to make somebody go one way or the other, but I mean, we're trying to be hospitable to business, so the free bagging thing for construction downtown, I think, ought to be something that we consider retaining in an effort to continue to even have these small enticements. They all add up.
Yeah, we were never bagging them for free for the construction. They were just being,
Downtown?
you're right, they were
Well, who
never,
gets it free downtown then? 'Cause
nobody gets it free downtown. There wasn't a separate downtown rate. I'm proposing a separate rate that is less than what.
So this is
we
a
ch-
lower rate.
It is a lower
Lower
rate.
rate.
All right. Forget what I said.
Okay.
That was just for
Eric.
you, Mike.
Eric?
So, is there an estimate of how much you anticipate the revenue from this entire fee schedule? How much different will this be as opposed to if the fee schedule didn't change?
Well, that's a lot of data to look at. I'd have to get with all the departments and ask them to give me, at the end of the
Okay.
year, what those totals were on all those fees. And that is something that I could get for you. At the end of the
Okay.
fiscal year, I could look at last fiscal year's total, or I can
Right.
give you an estimate of that just based on
Yeah.
what we currently received this year.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's very complex in the sense that some things are going up a little, some things are going up a lot, a couple of things are going to be reduced,
Right.
and lots of things are staying the same.
The major
And-
fee increase is not to interrupt, but are the sewer benefit tax. That's where you're going to get the majority of your fee increase. And of course, Rich has just stepped up here, so he could probably elaborate a little bit on that.
I think Mayor Pressing wanted to
Yeah, I
chime
just
in.
wanted to say that is part of the budget process, so you will see it every year, and Rich might want to say
Right,
something.
that's what I was just going to suggest, is during the budget process, which we're about to get into over the next couple of months. This is
Turn
one of
on your
those-
microphone.
Mike?
This is one of the items we will normally look at with each department, the fees that they have now and what they're proposing to change for next year, and do a calculation to see just how much additional revenue that each of these fee increases will generate.
Okay, so at this point, we don't really have a clear idea about the total revenue impact of this entire schedule.
We don't have the whole number right now, no, but we can get that.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to have at least a ballpark,
Mhm.
yeah.
Charlie?
Yeah, one thing we should, some of these things keep up with the CPI, and the other ones are adjusted every 3 years or 5 years to sort of mimic the CPI or something like that.
Right.
You would hope we could look historically at the last 5, 10, or 20 years worth of budget and see how the actual numbers have come in and see if they correspond to the CPI. If they do, then we're probably doing the right thing. If they're lower, we're missing out, I think, and if we're higher, we're probably making a mistake. So we're making, if we're not hitting roughly the CPI, we're probably, but if on average we are, I would think we would want to keep up with the CPI.
Any more questions about the fees? If not, could we have a motion to send the second part of the schedule of fees to council?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
It's been moved and seconded to send the rest of the fee schedule to council on May 5th
5th.
with recommendation for approval. Any
So-
further discussion? Oh,
No.
all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. 10, yeah. Okay, next up, item 10 is resolution number 2014-03-015R, resolution approving and authorizing an agreement with Urbana-Champaign Big Broadband NFP regarding billing, collection, and accounting services. Rich Hensel.
Good evening. This is a agreement to formalize the services that the Finance Department has been providing to the UC2B nonprofit to help it get established over the last 6 months or so. Since June of last year, the Finance Department has provided billing services to all the UC2B subscribers. We collect their fees every month and then remit those to the nonprofit, and we also charge for those services. Currently, we're charging $1 per subscriber bill, as well as cost to recover miscellaneous costs such as postage and envelopes and paper and the like. So it's a break-even operation, so we recommend approval of this agreement.
Thank you. Charlie?
Yeah, I'd like to comment that this was very interesting to read. It's extremely thorough in all the little I's and T's, and I don't know if it's the combination of you guys doing this or whatever, but it's pretty thorough. So I have, and we heard from Brandon, so I would think that it's in pretty good shape.
Anyone else? Eric?
I move sending this to council with a recommendation for approval.
It's been moved and seconded to send resolution number 2014-03-015R to council with recommendation for approval. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Wait, could I?
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there more discussion? Dennis?
Yeah, I'd like to, I guess it's a discussion, not so much about this exact proposal, but I would like to see an opportunity perhaps to, I don't know, manage the building such that people had an option for paying 3 months in advance or several months in advance, or in groupings rather than having a monthly billing. I think it would save, because this comes to the house in a separate envelope every month. I'm wondering if it's possible to get a billing that would be grouped, like one pays for trash hauling or for newspaper subscriptions. I wonder if it would save a city money, and I wonder if it would be acceptable.
I think that change is possible. The City of Urbana, the Finance Department, has agreed to administer the billing the way that UCTB and the nonprofit would like it to be administered. So I think it would be primarily initially their call, how they wanted to change the billing, if they wanted to do it by 3 months or whatever. We can certainly administer whatever they'd like to do.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Next up is ordinance number 2014-03-025, an ordinance directing the Champaign County Clerk to abate the tax levy for the general corporate purpose for the year beginning July 1st, 2013 and ending June 30th, 2014. Rich Hinchell.
Yes, this is a tax abatement ordinance. If you recall, last November, the tax levy ordinance was passed, levying about $7.3 million for this fiscal year. Normally what would happen is that levy would stand, and the county clerk, once they knew what the EAV, the equalized assessed value, would be for this year, they would apply that levy dollar amount to the EAV and come up with a rate. And we get a tax extension notice telling us what the EAV was, what the levy was that we had asked for, and then what the math was that generated that rate. And at that point, you could agree or disagree. What this ordinance is doing is, in advance of that notice, which we're expecting to get on or about April 1st, is taking the action to, in advance, set the rate at $1.35.5, which is the rate for this current year. So what would happen is, once we receive that tax extension notice, we would see what the final EAV was. We would apply this rate of $1.35.5, recalculate the actual dollar amount of the levy, and with this ordinance and the communication back to the county clerk, they would revise that tax extension ordinance, issue a new one to us, and that's what the levy and rate would be for this fiscal year.
Okay, any questions for Rich? Mayor Preston.
This was the discussion that we had about what we're going to do with the fact that the hospitals are not paying property taxes. And I think there was a consensus that we should try to stay at the same rate, which is going to be a little bit higher than Champaign's, we think. But rather than, I mean, the school district is raising their rate, and the park district is raising their rate, so we thought we would try to hold the line.
Any other? Oh, Diane?
Well, I know for some of us, when we considered the increasing the local sales tax, quarter-cent local sales tax, in my mind anyway, I was very committed to keeping our property tax rate the same. So I'm happy to support this.
Eric?
This is probably just a coincidence, but this $273,000 is awfully close in dollar amount to what we are spending this year on social service funding to agencies in town. Are we in danger of jeopardizing our ability to do that?
Mayor Preston?
I think that the the school district and the park district might be able to pick up some of the costs I've suggested where they might look for funding. And you heard from the township that their medical costs are going down, so we could see what the township could pick up. So I think we'll try to make sure that the same services get provided, but they might not be funded directly by the city. So I think we've tried to keep the money the same.
Okay, and you believe that there's a good chance we'll be able to do that even with this levy at the rate that's recommended?
This is pretty much talking about the budget staying pretty stable. We have some other revenue areas that will increase, but my goal is to try to keep the funding for the social services the same, but shift some of it to some other organizations that are better able to handle it than we are at this point.
Any, so I guess we need a motion for this one.
So moved.
It's been moved by Carol and seconded by Dennis to send ordinance number 2014-03-025R, no R, to council with recommendation for approval. Is there any further discussion? Mike?
Okay, so, yeah, I'm the guy who was just arguing against a fee decrease because I didn't understand that there was already a fee, so please bear with me. I'm following your memo here. My question is maybe a dumb one, but I have to ask it anyway. So the 1.355 is the rate, and no matter what happens with the EAV, that 1.355 is the maximum rate. Is that correct?
If this ordinance were to pass, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. That motion carries. Item 12, ordinance number 2014-03-026, an ordinance annexing certain territory to the city of Urbana, 3101 East Anthony Drive. Patrick and Stephanie Funkhauser. Sir, Libby Tyler.
This is another lot in the Wildberry Acres subdivision that we talked about before at council, and this would be the fifth of the 6 different lots. And the annexation petition's been received, and the annexation would become effective March 27th.
Any questions for Libby? Is there a motion?
Yeah, I'll make it.
Oh, Dennis?
Yeah, so following the previous annexations, which we've all understood as part of the pre-existing agreement with the city, I would move that we move ordinance number 2014-03-026, annexing certain territories in Urbana, 3101 East Anthony Drive, to the City Council with the recommendation of approving it.
Second.
It's been moved by Roberts and seconded by Marlin to send ordinance number 2014-03-026 to council with recommendation for approval. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Oh, sorry. And that motion carries. For item 13, we do have a public input. Philip Van Ness. This is ordinance number 2014-03-027, an ordinance amending the addendum to the Goodyear Real Estate Option and Contract, 202 South Vine Street.
Good evening. I feel like the last man in a long line of speakers and probably hoping only that you'll stay awake long enough for the 2 minutes I have to put before you. First of all, my name is Phil Van Ness. I'm here on behalf of Don Fitzgerald, a longtime businessman in downtown Urbana, and I'm happy to report that I'm also becoming a new resident of Urbana. So that's a twofer for us. I wanted to, first of all, send a shout out to city staff, and particularly Tom Carino and City Attorney Waller for their help. We've negotiated, and I have to say they drove a hard bargain with us, but I think a fair bargain. I want to emphasize that in this case, the staff and I have also been in contact with the attorney for the original sellers under this 2010-2011 agreement. That would be Attorney Phil Knox. And he and his clients are in full agreement with what we're trying to do here. In a nutshell, what we're trying to do is take a $100,000 time-limited, and I would suggest to you almost impossible to attain escrow account and replace it with a $3,000 permanent fund that is not subject to any defeasing language that you have in there right now. This is not one of those deals where at the stroke of midnight you're going to lose it. At the stroke of midnight you're going to keep it. Beyond that, the staff comments look pretty fulsome and self-explanatory. I'm happy to answer questions if you have any for me.
I probably should have done that in the other order. Have Tom present first, and then we could ask you questions. Do you mind sitting there while Tom presents, and then we may have questions after that? Okay, Tom Carino.
Sure. I have a brief presentation prepared. Some of this will be redundant, but you have before you an ordinance amending the addendum to the Goodyear Real Estate Option and Contract. In 2010, the city acquired an option for the purpose of redevelopment on the Goodyear building. That was a property assembly, again, for the purpose of redevelopment. As part of our due diligence, we identified 2 small areas of contamination. However, at the time, we would either have to do more testing to further define it or negotiate with the sellers, which we did, and in 2011, we negotiated a $100,000 escrow for remediation, pursuit of an NFR, soil removal, basically remediation activities on the site. Basically, that escrow, again, is $100,000 that came from the purchase price, and that escrow is good through May 1st, 2015. Moving forward, we were approached by Mr. Don Fitzgerald, who has a separate agreement with the sellers that he would be responsible for any money the city used out of the escrow so that the sellers are held harmless. Representatives of Mr. Fitzgerald approached us and said, how can we further define the contamination? So we went forward. Mr. Fitzgerald further defined the contamination, which is very localized, and he has some estimates in his environmental reports. There are some assumptions that the building is gone, the construction crew is mobilized, and it is removal of only one of those areas of contamination. As Mr. Van Ness said, we then negotiated and said, well, we're not sure if the assumptions apply here, and there's some liability the city's taking on, so we would agree to release that $100,000 escrow if council agrees to the ordinance in exchange for a $3,000 cash payment. That cash payment has no deadline, and so that fits with the eventual redevelopment of the site. It fits with us not causing business interruption at Goodyear because one of the areas of contamination is under the building. If we wanted to further define or if we wanted to remediate now, we'd have to start breaking up the floor and disrupt business operations, which we don't want to do. That's why it would be difficult to remediate before May 1st, 2015 without disrupting business. So again, we've negotiated a $3,000 cash payment that can be used into the future upon redevelopment of the site. So again, all of the parties involved have reviewed and agree with the concept, and staff is recommending approval.
Are there questions? Diane?
I was ready to move.
Oh, are there any questions? Dennis?
Yeah. So I guess what I'm wondering is the $3,000 going to cover do you think that it's going to be a fair amount that covers an unknown contamination, which it's more likely that there's going to be larger contamination under the building if there's, if it's coming down through a drain or a, some other kind of, feature which was maybe being used to, release or deposit, I don't know, oils or whatever from. So I'm just wondering if we're really covered. Are we asking for enough to cover the potential liability? Yeah,
Our folks in Public Works reviewed the environmental audit that was conducted by Mr. Fitzgerald, and our folks were satisfied that the techniques used were good techniques in defining the contamination, again, very localized. The one area of contamination that this audit particularly covered was in a former alignment pit
at the business. The second area of contamination that wasn't dealt with so much in this report is a small area of mercury near where a dumpster is located, and it's thought that that's probably from bulbs containing mercury that were thrown into the dumpster. And so it's expected that not a lot of soil will need to be removed related to that second area of contamination. So our folks, having reviewed this, feel that $3,000 is a reasonable cost. And there is also the business Goodyear is currently leasing that property or that building from the city at approximately $3,000 a month. That money is going into a fund to assist with demolition, come redevelopment, and possibly some incentives. So this $3,000 will go into that fund, and that fund will be more than enough to cover remediation. Even if something pops up and it's a little more than $3,000, the city has the funds coming from that lease agreement for the purposes of demolition and remediation. So city staff is satisfied that this will be sufficient.
And I ask that because, you know, when looking at the purchase of other properties in the downtown area, potential contamination became an overriding reason why the city wouldn't be involved. Yeah, I'm also thinking of, you know, not just the Denny site, but others that we didn't acquire because of the contamination liability. So, and it was also, you know, we have several sites in the downtown that used to be garages at one time, and so we have a working garage here. I just am hoping that we're not underestimating what potentially we could have as a liability.
Carol.
So I don't see, did we get a report from the Illinois EPA? Is that what you're going off of? No.
No, so I have a couple of binders over there of environmental reports conducted by private environmental consultants that originally identified the two areas of contamination. Mr. Fitzgerald funded additional environmental work by a private environmental consulting company. And so that's what we have. If the city were to attempt to get a no further remediation letter or no further remediation determination from IEPA, we would at that point submit everything to IEPA to get that no further remediation letter. And at one point we considered doing that for this property. But the actual removal of soil and remediation is actually more cost effective in this case. So we would not be working with IEPA related to the remediation, in that everything we need was given to us by private environmental consulting firms.
This is all done before we bought the property years ago.
Eric?
Well, I think the other factor, in addition to the $3,000 a month that we're getting in leasing, is the taxes that Goodyear pays, you know, on their business during the time that they're in operation. So I think it's a good bet. I think it's a really good bet that we should let them stay in operation as long, you know, until they vacate. It sounds as though we're likely to come out way ahead on that.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Van Ness? If not, Diane.
Well, assuming that there never was a dry cleaning establishment on this site, I will move ordinance number 2014-03-027 to council with a recommendation for approval.
I will second with similar caveats.
It's been moved and seconded to send resolution number 2014-03-027 to council with recommendation for approval. Any further comments? Charlie?
I will point out that we, you know, regardless of what happens to that space, we do want to relocate the business to another suitable location near downtown Urbana. And staff is working and will work with the new owner to do that.
Anyone else? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is resolution number 2014-03-016R, resolution in favor of adequate and fair funding for Illinois 911 systems. Mary Pressing.
Well, this is just a draft, but it could be formatted by the clerk's office, you know, with all the proper things. But the 911 system was adopted a quarter of a century ago, and various communities in Illinois had referenda questions on the ballot. In Champaign County, we've done it in 2 steps, 2 75-cent referendums. So we charge $1.50 a month for landline phones. And of course, the technology has changed and people are using cell phones. And finally, the state got around to passing a statewide law, which is a 57-cent a month charge that we get. So our revenue has been going down and the costs are going up. And the projections show us having to pay double-digit increases every year, which we've been paying. And we're up to almost $500,000 right now. It's $457,000, I think. And the request for next year in the proposed MetCAD budget was to add another $127,000. Part of that was for a better system because we think Rand Tool's going to come in, and we would only be sharing with the university, and we'll have more space available for our radio transactions or with the MetCAD Center. So this is a problem that is statewide. There have been efforts to modestly increase the fee, and there's a committee that's put together to make recommendations. It has 11 people on it, 5 of whom are telephone companies. And I think the telephone companies have been fighting this, but it's not really a telephone company issue. It is a public safety issue. And the more mobile phones there are and cell phones, the more calls we get to MetCAD because people can see things that they wouldn't see if they're sitting in their home with a landline phone. So there's a real demand, and it's a tremendous problem throughout the state. I brought this up at the meeting on Wednesday and Thursday of the Law Enforcement Training Standards Board, and they were wildly enthusiastic in favor of doing this. And what I'm trying to do is get a grassroots movement throughout the state where the municipalities and counties that are paying these bills will contact their local legislators and ask them to please support a bill that would allow the voted amount to be extended to all devices that connect with 911 systems. So we don't have to spell out what the technology is because the technology keeps changing. So I talk with many mayors, and I've talked with Tom Dart, who's the sheriff of Cook County. He's behind this. The sheriff of St. Clair County, the sheriff of Vermilion County, and I think a lot of mayors too. I've talked with people in Rockford. Evanston is going to put this on, the Evanston mayor is going to put this on the city council agenda there. And this would, if we can get this done, it would bring in enough money so that we wouldn't have these huge increases. They're planning for the future, and they have projections, but they're based on no change in the state law, and they're also based on the assumption that we can keep on every year having double-digit increases in our MetCAD fees, and I think those are 2 very bad assumptions. So I think what needs to be done is to change the state law and bring it into line because technology really does change in a quarter of a century. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. And I will say that our 2 legislators have already said they'd support this, Naomi Jacobson in the House and Mike Frericks in the Senate. But we need to set a good example.
Charlie? Diane?
Just had a couple of questions. For every landline account, there's a $1.50 per month fee. Does that go to the phone company, which then sends that to the city, and then we pay MetCAD? Does it go directly to MetCAD? How does that work?
The phone company collects it, is my understanding.
They collect it, and then what do they do with that
They
fee?
send it to MetCAD.
They send it. So this,
Or it might go through the state. I'm not real clear on that, but they collect it. It's on your phone bill. If you look at your phone bill.
Well, I had trouble finding it on my phone bill, but that's another issue.
That's another part of the problem.
No.
No.
My other question is then this $500,000 that the city of Urbana is paying, it looks like part of it's coming out of the police department budget and part out of the fire department budget. That's in addition to the $1.50 that each customer is paying.
Right.
Okay.
Because the $1.50 revenues are declining as people abandon landlines, and they're substituting 57 cents for $1.50, so you can see why the revenue's going down. And the expenses are going up, so that's why our contribution has to go up to keep the system going. But actually what we're doing is looking to the future, to future expenses. And they're trying to fund it now, like the city does for replacing vehicles.
Okay, so now my question is to the wording of this resolution, and I support it in theory. I absolutely believe that cell phones should be contributing to this, but in a landline, there's one account per household, and you can have, you know, as many different phones as you want, but you've got one phone number. When you have a cell phone account, you can have one account, but multiple phone numbers. For instance, we have 3 phone numbers on our one cell phone account. So are you asking to assess this $1.50 fee per account, per cell phone number?
Per device.
Per device. So
which
that
would
means
be a number.
So that means a household could be paying $4.50 or $6 a month if they have 4. They could be paying $6 a month if they have 4 cell phones on one account.
Well, your phone bill right now has $1.50 per phone.
Per
no, line.
Per line.
Per line,
yes.
Right.
Okay. That's just so I understand what this is meaning.
Right.
Okay.
But people are paying $200 a month for phones. And if you ask them to pay $1.50 instead of 57 cents, I think they can afford that.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to understand what this language was saying. So it's
Yeah.
per
Well,
phone line.
this is just, this is not a legislative bill. This is just a suggestion that people seem to be very enthusiastic about. So the actual legislation would be written later, but this is to spur the legislators on so that action will be taken.
I just wanted to understand
Yeah.
what I was voting on.
Right.
Eric?
Well, and I guess I would say also that there's tremendous proliferation of phone numbers with cell phones. So it might be less than $1.50 a phone number if you included each of the numbers of the cell phones.
I had
Well, you know, it depends on the jurisdiction, too. They all have different numbers, but this is just an initial start to the conversation to get the local jurisdictions to state that they can't afford the way things are going right now, because our whole budget's going to be taken up by NetCat if we don't do something.
I had a question. I mean, it seems like it's the right approach to get the money from the cell phones. I'm not sure if it's the right solution because this would be billed to the home address of the cell phone carrier, and so many students and others in our town still wouldn't contribute because they have their phones through a home address in Chicago or elsewhere. So I was wondering if there had been any discussion of trying to narrow down what the primary service area of the phone user is and remit the taxes to that area rather than the home address.
Yes, there has been discussion of that. I understand that it's not technically possible to do that. But we would be making a great step forward if we would just do it by the billing address. Because right now, as I said, the revenues are from the surtax are going down. And so that's why we have to pick up a bigger and bigger amount. So I guess my view of it is we really can't get to perfect right now, but we can get to much better than where we are. And the technology may change that we could, you know, bill it the other way. But in the meantime, we really have to do something because people all over the state are just desperate to get some other method of funding this.
Okay, thanks. Carol?
It would be great to have a focus session for the public to join in on this conversation in relationship to funding the MetCat. But also, if you have a landline like I do and cell phone, then that family would be double billed under that analogy. And so we'd like to, you know, certainly look at how to not double bill people who are using both landline and home phone service.
Well, they're being double billed now. They're paying $1.50 for the landline, and we get 57 cents for the cell phone.
Right.
So it would just be making the whatever technology you choose to be equal.
Mm-hmm.
Eric?
Well,
I'd like to move this to the full council with a recommendation for approval with the understanding that this will get in between hammered out into the language of a resolution.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? Carol?
Yeah, I don't, this is my first time, I don't understand how Metcalf system, I have some numbers that say we are certainly not able to maintain our current funding model that we have for Metcalf, which I would like for us to actually unravel a little bit for the public to understand. And secondly, that the proposal here, not that it does not provide a good revenue stream, but I don't know what the impact is going to be to increase the fee on Metcat on cell phones, every line for a family. So for a family of 4 like myself, and we have a family shared plan, each of those lines really increases the cost for that family. And I think that needs to be considered before we actually move forward on a proposal that is not clearly articulated for the few people that may not be able to actually afford it. We do have people that cannot afford it, and we should consider that. And I think the open discussion allows us to figure out a plan that includes those folks that who may actually not be able to afford that double billing.
Any other discussion on that? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
That motion carries. Finally, resolution number 2014-03-017R, a resolution to support FCC efforts in protecting local authority to build broadband infrastructure. Charlie, did you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, I'll step up here. It's this is something Bill and I tossing back and forth. Bill did most of the work. I did the typing. The FCC has been addressing this issue. It's come to the front that communities doing broadband are being limited in a number of places by the telecom companies, and there've been a number of discussions on various national public radio type shows discussing this issue. Communities basically are having to jumpstart fiber or basically bypass telecoms because the telecom companies are simply not doing fiber. They have found it in their best interest to just stay with the status quo, and as a consequence, we're falling behind many other countries in the world. Korea, Australia, New Zealand, most of the European companies all have high-speed fiber-based infrastructure or will have it within a couple of years. They've all made commitments to do this. So basically, this is just basically to join the support for the FCC to roll back some of the state telecom-based interference to doing community broadband such as ours. We're lucky in Illinois; nothing like this has happened, but let's make sure it doesn't happen.
Any questions? If not, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to send resolution number 2014-03-017R to council with recommendation for approval. Any further discussion? Michael.
So, not really to the merits of the issue, but just an observation. As a fan of federalism, I find it a bit odd that we are urging the federal government to prohibit the states from prohibiting the local governments from doing something. It's just a bit ironic. Not speaking to the substance of the issue at all, but just wanted to point that out.
Mm-hmm.
If I could respond to that, it's
Charlie.
basically just like building the interstate highway system. You know, if it wasn't done by the federal government, we would have, all these little fiefdoms all over the place running what is a very efficient system that benefits our economy immensely. If we don't do something similar with fiber infrastructure, we're going to become a second-rate nation.
Eric.
And on a less serious note, public policy and political process are rich with irony. It's best to
Indeed.
look at it with a sense of humor.
And I am.
Dennis.
And sometimes the little guy actually knows how to hold the paddle.
Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries. Diane?
Sorry to prolong this, but back to the MedCAD discussion. I had questions about MedCAD in terms of the overall budget, how it works, and that sort of thing. And I was going to call, I was given the name of the MedCAD director, Ralph Caldwell, and I was just going to call him with some questions. But it might be useful if we invited him to come next Monday night and give us an overview on how MedCAD works. I did the police academy, Citizens Police Academy, but unfortunately I had to miss the night that we toured MedCAD. So I really would like an overview of MedCAD, its budget, and how these fees fit into the budget and the service area. And it would just be an opportunity for us all to ask questions at the same time rather than individual council members calling with questions. So would it be possible to invite Mr. Caldwell to come next week, or a representative?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no further business, this meeting is adjourned.